Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Saturday Morning Comic Review. I'm your host, Dylan Wallace. Today, we have a great issue for you. It is going to be an Omega Run issue, so we're catching up on backlogs. Today, every single book that we read is going to be a backlog. I'm going to say it's going to be more of like a high fantasy themed episode. Unintentionally, it's just that's kind of the books that I have left in my backlog as we start carving through it. So I think with that, we'll just go ahead and dive right in, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, as per usual, we have 10 books for review. Video folks, you can already see it up, but I'll just go ahead and read through all 10 of these so you know which books I'm reviewing and when. We have Kingdom Riders. It's just kind of a continuation of reading through that story. Assorted Crisis Events. This is going to be issue number 5 in the conclusion. We have Do a Powerbomb, issue number 4. We have from volume 2 of Poison Ivy. This is going to be Poison Ivy, issue number 8. Then from volume 7 of Saga, the first issue here, it's issue number 37. Then we have Batman and Robin, number 20. Then The Nice House on the Lake from volume 2, issue number 11. Then a brand new book that we're starting is going to be Fable, which is issue number 151, just jumping in the middle of that story. Then we have Helen of Wyndhorn, issue number 5. And then last but not least, this behemoth of a book here is Dragon Age. This doesn't have any issues in it, so similar to like Kingdom Riders, it's just going to be as much as we read through the book and as far as we get through the story. So those will be the books that we review. Just give me a second to get organized because I got all these trades again and they get pretty heavy. Some are hardcover, some are softs. I want to be careful with the Batman and Robin single issue. So we're going to start off here with Kingdom Riders. So reminder with this one, there's no rating on League whatsoever. So as of right now, there's no stars. I'm halfway through the book at this point, so we got a little bit longer to go. In case this is your first time tuning in, first of all, welcome. Appreciate you hopping in. I just want to give you a heads up. How I review these books is I do spoil the heck out of them, so just bear that in mind. If you're not interested in spoilers, it's just not really going to be the show for you. But with that being said, I'll give you my rating. I'll give you the League rating. I'll catch you up on the story thus far. Talk about the actual issue, or in this instance, how far I got through the book, and then whether or not it would be a good one to jump into at that particular time and moment. And obviously for this one, it's not going to be that case. And then for the video folks, I'll go ahead and show off some of the artwork too, so you can get a flavor and decide for yourself if this is something that you want to jump into. So Kingdom Riders here. We have kind of a high fantasy setting here. You got this kingdom that was destroyed, but it's been reunited, and they're more in like kind of a feudal serfdom type of hierarchy. And so we have Kayla, who's our main character, and Mal, who's like one of her friends. They're trying to buy their freedom. There's this big race in this kingdom that they have annually. Kayla says that she's going to join it, and for the Lord that she is indebted to bet on her, and she'll win. All the earnings can go to him, and he can, that'll then buy their freedom. The race or the qualifier happens. She does end up winning, but when she entered the race, she looked pretty feeble and pretty amateurish out there, so he decided not to bet on her, and she ends up winning. And so everyone's excited and thinking that both Kayla and Mal are now free to go, and that catches up to where I kind of left off on the story. So Kayla goes up to her lord and is like, hey, I won, it should be free to go. And he says no. I'm not going to allow that because, well, he didn't gamble on her for one, but two, said it was a complete sham, that she cheated her way through. She's like, nope, I won that race fair and square. Like, everyone kind of like cheats in that thing, as long as the only rule is to try to get to the finish line or be like the first one to finish in the first place. And this is a race where nobody has finished it before, and she came the closest to ever doing it in the history of this qualifier race. So obviously did extraordinarily well. And so when this lord is denying everything, you have some higher ups that are part of like the race and more of like the actual crown rather than the particular lordship. And so they get word that, hey, this lord isn't following through on his word. We have this contract in writing. So they see it and they're like, well, we don't want to piss off the king, do we? And so he backs down. He does allow them to buy their freedom, and they are now free to go. And so Kayla and Mal then get recruited by this guy who's going around to different qualifier races, and he's bringing on basically misfits and trying to race under his own banner. And Kayla and Mal have nowhere else to go, so they're like, hey, we might as well just join with this guy. He's going to have food and thinks that we have a good shot at the actual race. So they both go with him and teleport back to his farm, which is some other kind of distant land, and she gets to meet the other riders that are going to participate. You got this one guy who's just a hardo and just very focused on the race, and that's like the only thing he cares about, and meets this other two brothers who are racing as well, and they're racing, for their country and their land, or, they're part of the kingdom as well. And she comes to realize that she's like racing with highborns. So if you equated it to like a Hunger Games, these are folks in like District 1, District 2, District 3, and they're all the way back in like District 7, District 8. And so she's just amazed by these people and just to be around them, and they all get ready and prepared, and they head out to the big race. I flipped over to the page basically where we have the race and they're getting organized, and I was like, okay, this is probably a good place to stop off. But a lot of it was just preparation, getting to know the team, things like that. So pretty good. For what I read, I'd give it a 4, and overall, I'd say the book is probably a 4 right now. Just want to get to the part I actually reviewed here. So showing off some of the artwork here. You see, it's more like kind of like Saturday morning cartoon. I almost equate it to like Avatar: The Last Airbender is a good way to describe some of the art style. As you see flipping through here, it is more of on the young adult style, or of style of writing. So just kind of bear that in mind. But I've been enjoying it. It's been really good and an interesting story, and I like where it's leading thus far. So here's where I left off, where you basically have all these different racers that she's about to face off in the next race. So Kingdom Riders, I've been enjoying it. I would recommend it at this point, and we'll just see where it keeps going. So just kind of keep on reading through that. And then next up is Assorted Crisis Events. So I read through issue number 5, which is the conclusion of this story. And trigger warning for this, he does talk about suicide, and there's actually a couple of issues in this episode that talk about that. So I just want to give fair warning, because I know that is a very touchy subject for obvious reasons. So Assorted Crisis Event issue number 5 does speak on that pretty heavily here. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.7. Lee was way higher on this than I was. But it's still really, really good. I think for me, though, for Assorted Crisis Events, I'm probably going to stop right here, because though the stories are super moving, I don't feel like compelled to read what's next. Like a James Tynion, like those are pretty crazy, twisted, dark stories, but it's like a thriller and you want to keep reading. These I don't. These are like your worst nightmares come true. And it's like pretty horrifying. So to set up the context here of what's happening is there's this universe, and all of these crisis events are happening all at the same time to all different people. Sometimes it's one person only. Sometimes it's multiple people. It's a whole group. It could be like a whole country. Time is all screwed up, and people are just living through this as though it's like the flu, right? Of like, you could get this, nobody knows what's going to happen, and you are dealing with this event. And so we've dealt with a guy who was living like the same lifetime over and over again. We dealt with these two parallel towns that were in parallel universes that met up together, and how it destroyed that town. This one is about a girl that lives a 60-second loop, and it's a horrible, horrible 60-second loop of her parents are fighting, and her dad strikes her mother, and then it just repeats the cycle of like them arguing, and then the slap, and then them arguing and the slap. And she says it was the length of millions of years. That's how long it felt this 60 seconds was, just over and over and over again, until suddenly she snapped out of it. But to her, it was millions of years. To everyone else, it was 60 seconds. And then on top of that, this was very early on when these crisis events started happening. So nobody really believed her that this happened. So they get everyone. They get psychologists, psychiatrists, like any sort of guidance counselor. They get like priests, everyone that you can imagine involved. And they all say different things on how they could heal her or treat her or how she gets past it. But what I just explained, if any of that ever happened to any of us, you'd be screwed up for eternity. And so sure enough, she keeps going and living through life, but she's is so screwed up from that event that she can't tell what's real and what's not, and she live in the same moments again, and she tries to escape it and she can't, and basically she comes to the conclusion like the only escape is to take her own life. And so when she goes to take her own life, it then puts her right back into that 60-second time loop, and she looks down at her younger self looking at herself now, and she like wants to scream to herself of like, I believe you, because really the kind of the crux of it is that nobody believed her that any of this stuff had happened. And so she tries to kill herself, the rope breaks from the fan, and so she doesn't die basically, and takes that as a sign. And then now she's trying to help other people that are going through these crisis events, because remember, again, this happens like right at the beginning of where this is starting to become like, oh, people are realizing all these horrible, horrific things are constantly happening. And so it's just like a really touching ending to a super dark, twisted, screwed up story. And that's the end of the trade. So, I just don't feel compelled to keep reading these super screwed up things, and they're not all connected together. It's just going to be where I end up just kind of stopping. But critically, highly regarded here. All the books ranged anywhere from 4.5 to a 4. I would recommend it in the end, but for me, I don't need it to read anymore. It's like, I get what you guys are doing. I'm going to spend my money elsewhere and just read some other books is all. So let's go ahead and show off some of the artwork so you can take a look. The other reason I gave this a 4 rather than a 4.5 is it's super confusing as to what direction to read everything. So here's like kind of the events that happen and like the depression. And so some of the stuff is like super obvious, right? Just read it in a circle and you'll be fine. But then you get stuff like this where it's like kind of confusing. And then you get stuff like this, like awesome from an art perspective, very difficult and challenging to read as you're like kind of going through. I think there's like an infinity loop that kind of cycles through as well that makes it a little difficult and challenging. Like here's another example of it. Like really cool artwork for sure. Where you have like these mazes. Here it is, like the infinity loop. It's like, where do you start and where do you end? So it just takes longer, which can be pretty annoying. And then here's where she tries to take her life, but she isn't able to in the end. And basically where she goes and decides to be part of these like kind of small group circles to get her life on track. So it's Assorted crisis events. Dark, twisted. If it's something you're interested, it's in trade now. They're already working through volume 2, so that's been out in stores in singles, and I'm sure volume 2 will be available sometime in early to mid 2026. So yeah, Assorted crisis events issue number 5. I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.7. Then next up here is going to be Do a Powerbomb, which I've been loving so very much. This one, I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.7. Excellent story that we have going this far. We have Lona, and her mother was a pro wrestler, and her father was a pro wrestler. And her mother died in the ring, took a really bad bump on the neck, broke her neck, and unfortunately died from her injuries. But there's this necromancer who's been watching pro wrestling across the universe and loves it, wants to put together this huge tournament, and says he can raise the mother from the dead so long as Lona and Cobra's son, her father, end up winning the tournament. And so slowly throughout, she didn't realize Cobra's son was her dad. Now she does, and they're teamed up together, and they're working kind of in tandem. Along that happening I feel like she doesn't know yet. We know that as the reader. I feel like she doesn't know, so I could be wrong there. But along the way, these people that they're wrestling from different universes, wrestling is not fake in their universes, it's real. So they have to kind of work together, and like they're actually getting their ass handed to them. So they won their first match, they're going into their second match, and that picks up where we're at, and they're facing these like knights who are trying to bring back a fallen warrior of theirs. And so they fight together. In the first match, the whole kind of storyline is that Cobra's son was like taking all the punishment because he's like the older man, and like he knows that it's his daughter, but he wears a mask, and Lona doesn't know that is her father. And he takes all the punishment. She actually tags herself in. She hits an awesome moonsault. They win. Now in this match, their whole thing is like, okay, we have to work and do some tandem offense together, which is like kind of a classic tag team wrestling trope. So they do end up working together, and together they're able to beat and overcome this team, and they win and move on to the next round. As they're leaving, the next match is about to begin. and they both look up and they see someone is coming in from Tokyo, Japan. It's like, oh, okay, someone else is also here from Earth. And come to find out, it's Lona's uncle, who was the mother's brother. So it's, and he's also the trainer as well, too. So like, oh, okay, we have someone else in here who's trying to help and bring back the mom. Well, they have their match, and before the match, even the bell rings, they're attacked from behind, and her uncle is like the drop kick to the back of the neck, and like they're completely eliminated. And so now it's just Lona and Cobra-san who are the last team that can potentially help. As soon as they thought there was someone else that, okay, if they win, then they can bring her back, now he's immediately out, and he's hospitalized as well, too. And so Cobra-san in particular gets super pissed off. He's like, screw it. If they want blood, we'll give them blood. And, insinuates on picking up a steel chair that's wrapped in barbed wire, which to me insinuates that the next issue is going to be about some sort of death match, which is going to be dope. So it is an awesome book. And, at some point we're going to have like the big massive reveal to Lona that it's like her father that she's been teaming up with the whole time. The other interesting thing with Cobra-san is like Cobra-san is the one that unintentionally killed the mother too. So, and Cobra-san's a heel. He's a bad guy also. So they decided not to tell Lona that Cobra-san was her father in the ring because he was a heel and getting booed and all this stuff. And so now they're like, working together. She's none the wiser, but she's really good. People won't train her because of what happened to her mother. But now they see like this potential in her. It's an awesome, awesome story. And it mixes my two passions together. So you got to love that. So let's see where we are on doing a Powerbomb. So here we have kind of that tandem offense in the middle of the ring, which is pretty awesome and good. And here's a nice German suplex. And then she's helping out, trying to break up the pinfall. They get the victory there. It's like super over the top, almost like 80s like metal is the way that I would kind of describe it. And so here's where the uncle is about to enter in for his match, but see, he's attacked from behind. And so with that, they really just didn't stand a chance, and then they end up losing. And so when they're down and out in the hospital, that's what Cobra-san's like. If they want blood, we'll give them blood. And he has the chair with the barbed wire wrapped around it, the baseball bat with the barbed wire, some kendo sticks, some light tubes as well. It's going to be a gruesome one. So, cool story. Again, do a Powerbomb. I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.7. Highly, highly, highly recommend. Alrighty. Next up here is going to be Poison Ivy, issue number 8. And so for Poison Ivy here, I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4.2. I think with this book, it is just starting to pick back up in our second arc. So we have Poison Ivy, rather than trying to destroy the world that she did in the first 6 issues, now she's trying to go after like billionaire corporations that are destroying the planet. So she goes after this fracking company. In the previous issue, she runs into the CEO, but the CEO knows who she is and used to work with the professor that made Poison Ivy who she is. So she knows everything about Poison Ivy and used this like mist, and that like basically paralyzes Poison Ivy, and she's like stuck up against this wall. So the CEO leaves, and her assistant comes in and sees Poison Ivy up against the wall. And her assistant is actually from the annual edition, which was at the very end of the trade that I read, was an HR representative then. And so she left that company and happens to be working at this company. So Poison Ivy actually saved her life in that annual. And so now she sees her and is like, can you please help me? But obviously she sees Poison Ivy all like stuck and like vines sticking out of her and everything. And so she looks like a monster. And Poison Ivy is like, hey, if you help me, I'll like basically do whatever you want. And so what the HR rep decides to do is she's like, okay, let me go to the lab and see what I can find. There she does find an antidote, brings it back to Poison Ivy. But when she does, the CEO finds out. And at that point, she's basically has to make a decision on, do I side with Poison Ivy or do I side, with the company? And the whole reason she's afraid of, doing anything with the CEO is she's sick. She has this tumor on, I think it's her liver or something. She needs surgery. It's cancerous, and she needs the insurance and the benefits in order to, pay for the surgery. There's real world shit, as we all know. And So she decides to side with Poison Ivy only if she doesn't kill the CEO. So that way, hopefully, she can still have her job. Comic book logic. And so she does. She frees her. Poison Ivy takes the CEO, puts her in this big old, like, kind of like holding chamber thing. Think of like a Venus flytrap, but it's like huge and monstrosity. Holds her in there and is like, I'm only not killing you because she told me not to. The HR rep, she gets her surgery. Poison Ivy waits by her side, and it basically kind of closes out as like, okay, now Poison Ivy needs to reassess and like figure out what else she's going to do from here. So that's the story. I'd say maybe weaker on the story side of things, but on the visuals, as awesome as ever. So that's kind of the HR rep, and there you can see Poison Ivy all like strung up there. And here's where they're basically having this conversation. So, Poison Ivy can speak, but she's just like paralyzed. She's sending some of her plants with the HR rep so they can basically figure out what the antidote is. Finds it, and here's where the CEO lady comes in. HR rep's like, screw it, I'm going to help out Poison Ivy anyways. She frees her and puts her in, kind of this big old trap-looking thing, but doesn't kill her. And then they go and get the surgery with the assistant and basically trying to figure out what all they're going to do next. So, interesting, but I'd like to see it pick up in the next issue. Because as of right now, it's like, okay, it seems like we're doing like just one-off things here and there. Also, if you see on the cover here, Harley Quinn, I guess, is going to get introduced at some point. They're dating, Harley and Poison Ivy. So I'd like to get to that point as well. Maybe this was just some filler before we actually get to that piece. So I'm kind of up in the air of like, all right, what direction is this actually going to go? So I'm hoping things pick up in issue number 9. We're going to have to see. So, I mean, if you saw issue number 9, I mean, just get the trade at this point, and you should really start off with issue number 1, but it is like kind of a different arc. So, kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, that's Poison Ivy. Issue number 8, I gave it a 4. League gave it a 4 as well. And sorry, I realized I didn't say whether or not to jump in for do a Powerbomb. It's the trade, so just get the trade, and just start from there. No reason to get the singles on that. Speaking of which, from one trade to another, Saga, volume number 7. This is going to be issue number 37. This one, I gave it a 4, a rare 4 from Saga, and Lee gave it a 4.5. I think for this issue for me, it was like we're just starting up the latest adventure. So issue 36 at the end of volume 6 was the conclusion of kind of that arc where is the Will going to kill Prince Robot's son or not? He does not. Was Marco and Alana, were they going to free up Hazel? They do, and they got her. So now they're like all on the ship and they're regrouping. So from this point now, they being Prince Robot, Alana, Marco, Hazel, everyone in the tree spaceship, they got to get back to Prince Robot's son. And so along the trek, the spaceship is having issues. And so like, crap, like we're not going to be able to make it all the way back. So we can stop off at this one particular comet that's like pretty famous. And so this comet basically was like a paradise for a while. But then it kind of started getting overcrowded. It's a super diverse like melting pot. And now suddenly a civil war basically broke out of like two sides not liking each other. So it's super dangerous. But it does have like the repairs and things that they need and would be a fine resting point. So it's like dangerous to go there. They would have to stay hidden and like try to keep a low profile, but at the same time, that's like their best chance of actually being able to make it all the way back to Prince Robot's son. So they decide, okay, that's where we're going to go. They crash land there and they find like these almost like kind of like weasel looking things that are looking for help. And that's the cliffhanger. So we don't really get much story-wise other than they're going to this planet and this is what they have to do, in order to repair the ship. So that's why I just gave it a 4. It's like we didn't get much advancement on the story and not quite sure where things are going to head. You have an idea and they're dropping some breadcrumbs for us, but we're not fully there. So that was the reason for that score. But we'll go ahead and show off some of the artwork. I'd say for this one, as always with Saga, got to be careful because there is some dong very early on in the first issue, of course. But here we just learn a little bit more about the comets. Oh, Gwendolyn's reintroduced as well. So this is Marco's previous wife. And she looks like she's going to be reintroduced into the story. Didn't get much detail as to what she's up to right now. And so here are those little kind of weasel things at the end of the issue. So yeah, Saga, excuse me, issue 37. I'm just waiting to see what direction we plan on going for volume number 7. But, you know, the whole thing is a big old recommend. And this volume 7, it comes in like the big anthology set that has volumes 1 through 9. So I'm almost done there. I have volume 10, and then we got singles going on from there. So next up here is going to be Batman and Robin, issue number 20. This was an interesting one, like kind of a different take on everything. So I gave this one a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. I think Lee gave it a much higher score because it's a little bit different in its approach. So we have Robin, who's missing at this point. He was with Dr. Bashar. Memento is the big bad guy that's going after them. Attacked the hospital that they were at. Bashar is dead, and Robin is nowhere to be found. So Batman calls to the whole Bat family and is like, hey, call in every favor that you have. High alert, Robin's missing. We got to find him. And so Batman, who's still under the influence of, I think it's called the Grave Poppy or the Grave Digger Poppy, goes back to the manor and goes through Robin's room. And he's like seeing visions and things. It's basically kind of the scarecrow, gas, similar hallucinogenic effects. And he finds Robin's notebook or journal, but it's really a comic book. And he reads through it to try to find some clues as to what all is happening here, because Batman was under the impression that Dr. Bashar was actually Memento. That doesn't actually seem to be the case. And so we're reading through everything, and Robin is basically just giving us a catch-up onto where the story is at thus far, and that's a big reason why I gave it a 4. I was like, this is just a massive recap of all of that's happening. So this came out in April of this year, this single. So if you find it on the shelves, it is a perfect one to jump back in, because as you're reading through Robin's journal, it is a complete catch-up on everything that's happening in this Memento series thus far. So great from that perspective. And so at the end, Batman basically realizes, like, oh, Robin kept some sort of evidence journal as well, or a binder. So he goes up to reach and grab for that, and that's the cliffhanger. So it's a catch-up, and Batman learning about the Robin side of the story, which we've already kind of read through. Don't really get anything additional from there, and we'll just have to see where it goes in issue number 21. So it feels more like a catch-up and a filler issue, if anything, to be honest. But let's flip through the artwork, and what makes it cool is it does feel like, a high schooler sketching in their journal. So here's where it shows, that art style, and so it's very like pencil-y, looks like it was done in a notebook. So that is like a nice, refreshing change of pace in that, regard, but still at that same point, the story itself is just recapping everything that's really happened here. And so here's where Batman is like, oh, let me go and reach for this Memento binder and see what else he can learn there. So that's Batman and Robin, issue number 20. Again, I gave it a 4. Lee gave it a 4.3. And then next up, we're going to go The Nice House on the Lake. Man, this is crazy. We're so close to concluding this one. We're on issue number 11. One more, and then we'll be done with Nice House on the Lake. Then there's The Nice House by the Sea. So this one I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.4. It's a little confusing, but it's really not by the time it gets to the end. And that is like kind of a classic James Tynion writing style. So as I was reading through it, I was like, where the hell are we going with this? And it's like, there it is. Makes sense. I'm caught up now. So we have Walter, crazy alien. He has all of his friends in this like kind of like weird force field pod. Everyone else on the planet has died. He's erased their memories multiple times and trying to like correct everything to make sure that either they're behaving the way that he wants, which is just like to hang out and party during the middle of the end of the world, and then also to like not hate him as well, and then also try not to escape. So the last time that he reset their minds, they still think that the world is out there and they're trying to go after people. But he left one friend that still has the full memories, Nora. And so with Nora, took her to like kind of backstage, if you will. And these are the controls for the biome, and then also the controls for the people within the biome as well. So they can basically not die, or they can like have their memories or not have their memories, whatever the case may be. So all of that is controlled in this room. But when they go into that room, there's someone else in there. There's Ryan in there. So Ryan is an artist that was invited at the last second, and Walter reveals that there's 11 people in this biome. There's really only supposed to be 10. Someone's going to have to die. So Ryan thinks it's going to be her because she's like kind of the last person that joined the friend group. The way she describes it is like, it feels like, I went to camp 2 weeks late and everyone's already got their cliques in their friend groups. There's no way of like, kind of jumping in. And so she gets her hands on the controls. Meanwhile, all the friends realize that they're immortal and they found some guns on the property and they start shooting each other. So as Ryan goes in and screws with the controls, she brings down the morality while at the same time increasing the memory so everyone has full memory of all what has happened to them in these last 11 issues. And sure enough, someone shoots the gun as, kind of the standard morality is back, and that's the end of the previous issue. The start of this one, she's dead. So it's Naya, I think is her name, and she's dead. And Walter is like, oh my God, like, what do I do? It's like all screwed up. Nora gets all of her memories back, and she explains of like, I was the one that invented these controls. And you find out a little later into the issue what all that means. But Walter then goes to the friends there, and like they're all pissed off at him, obviously, because they remember everything all the way back from issue 1. So they know everyone is dead. They know they've tried multiple times to correct this, but it hasn't worked. And basically all the friends like end up scattering and leaving, and they're like, we gotta hunt down Walter wherever he's at, because Walter then like kind of disappears a little bit. So that happens, and then we learn from Nora, before we get to the second volume, had a conversation with Walter on how do I correct this. People knew that everyone died. Now they all hated Walter. He wanted to reset it. Nora's like, you have to like trick me. So you have to like make me forget everything before, and then we together have to collude and find something, and then it's going to direct it and change the way that people kind of perceive it, so that they think their own idea is to like try to burn this place down to the ground, which is like an insane Inception type of thing. But once Ryan returned all the memories, Nora, all those memories came back of like, oh, I told you, you have to like try to trick us. And so now we're basically at the point where Ryan's still in that room. Walter then comes back. Everyone's coming to kill Walter. Walter tells Ryan, like, you have 3 options. They're all going to kill me. Or you can kill and burn all this thing to the ground. Or you can basically kill all of them. It's like your 3 options. And that's the cliffhanger. So we'll see what she ends up deciding. Now, at the beginning of each one of these issues, and I haven't really talked about that, you get everyone's perspective, and the whole house looks like it's burnt to the ground. So that makes me think that either Walter's dead and they burn the place to the ground, or like Walter like kills himself or something. Who knows? We'll have to see when we read it. But I don't think she chooses the version to kill everyone. I think somehow the whole biome is destroyed. The force field comes down. Everyone then leaves and is like on their own. And then we'll have to see what all happens to Walter. And we'll have to see what happens to Ryan too, because I can't remember if in her story, if she was still there when it all kind of burned down or not. So that's how every single issue starts. It's like 2 or 3 pages of like, here's how I knew Walter, here's how I met him, and it's like everything around them is like on fire and ashes and things like that. So it's kind of interesting and crazy. It's a wild story for sure. Definitely worth just starting at the beginning. It doesn't really make sense to jump in volume 2. It's 12 parts, so I would just kind of recommend it that way. So here is Naya after she was shot. She's definitely like dead. Everyone's like trying to figure out what they do now. Nora and Walter are talking, and Walter basically flips out onto Nora of like, help me, like, what can I do? And Nora's like, you created this mess, you're gonna have to find your way out of it. This is where all the people are like trying to decide that they're all gonna go after Walter and try to kill him. And then Nora is basically, this is the reveal to us of that plan with Walter of like, let's erase everyone's memories, and you need to try to like trick me into like setting this whole thing up. And then Walter goes back to Ryan here in real time and is like, hey, this is what's going to happen. They're all going to come after me. You can burn it all to the ground. You could kill them. You could kill me. You got to make a decision. And that sets up our final issue of Nice House on the Lake. I don't know if I'm going to read it for this Saturday's podcast or if I'll save it for the Omega. But either way, we'll get it done before Christmas break because I can't wait. It's good stuff. So yeah, Nice House on the Lake. Issue number 11. I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.4. I know that sounds like such a super confusing story, but it's just worth it. Just go ahead and read that one for sure. Next, Fables 151. I don't really have an explanation as to why I wanted this book. It was this like long standing DC Black Label thing, and I think I saw the hardcover on the shelf. It looked interesting. I was like, screw it. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. So this is Fable issue 151 in this trade that is 12 issues long. So I'm jumping way into a story, way into the middle of it. And it's confusing. I gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 4. I think a lot of it for me is like I don't know these characters, what all is happening, and what all this is about. But it's some sort of fairy, magical fantasy place that was underneath New York City and blew up. And so now there are parts of New York City that are like blown up, and like people are trying to figure out what all to do about it. So that takes place. But I don't have any of the backstory as to how all that happened, and it doesn't explain it. Then we have this one lady. She is, let's see, they call it something in particular, so make sure I get the title correct here. She is the Green Jack is what they call it. But almost think of it like as a Green Arrow or like a Robin Hood or something. That's what she's kind of like dressed like. And she's the new one. I don't know what it means. But she finds the old one, this older guy who used to be the Green Jack as well. She's like, well, I'm the new Green Jack now, and I'm the one in charge. So I'm not quite sure what all that means or what's going to happen. If I'm using context clues, I mean, I think that means she's like some sort of peacekeeper or, you know, someone who has some level of authority over what all is happening here. And there may be some conflict between these two of like, was the title actually passed genuinely? Was it stolen? What all does it mean? TBD. And then the other piece is in the forest area, and I don't know where this is, if this is like just outside of New York in Central Park, I don't know. But there are these werewolves, and they've come back, and they're very cocky about coming back, and apparently they used to claim these lands hundreds of years ago, and they've come to reclaim them, but the way that they do it, like they're dressed, you know, in their human form, not in their wolf form, and just very nonchalant of like, yeah, I've decided that this is my land now, and no one's going to do anything about it. So we'll see all what happens there. And that's it. That's the setup. That's all we really got here. So that's why I gave it a 3.5. The artwork, though, pushes it above because I probably would have given it a 3, to be honest with you. But I think a lot of it is just I don't have the context as to what is happening. So, you know, high fantasy for sure. But the comic style is just kind of like a standard comic. But it's, you know, kind of interesting where you have these like side bars as well, where we're in kind of a foresty place. This is where Green Jack is like talking to some sort of grizzly, and she warns about the werewolves that are coming. And then here are those werewolves, where they're basically like claiming this land and saying that it's theirs. Here's where the old Green Jack is, and that confrontation. And then you have like these talking raccoons talking to basically say like, yeah, you know, this is going to be our land. It's like, your land? What the hell does that all mean? So we'll see where it all leads from there. So yeah, interesting story and setup, and we'll see where it goes. So that's Fables 151. I gave it a 3.5. Lee gave it a 4. And then the second to last one here, Helen of Wyndhorn. Man, loving this. Issue number 5. I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.6. Just an incredible story. With Helen of Wyndhorn. Definitely just pick up the trade at this point. It is a 6-parter, so I just have the hardcover version here. Issue number 5. So we are in a crazy high fantasy, like gothic, like think King Arthur, medieval fantasy style of story. So Helen, she was an orphan. She was gathered up by her grandfather. Her grandfather's this grand adventurer, has this huge manor, goes into the woods, and then ends up in this fantasy land, and he's like adventuring. He's killing these lords and all these different demons and gods and adventuring like crazy. Helen wants to join him. She eventually does. They go off and have all these adventures. Helen wants to actually train and like be a warrior along her grandfather. She does that, but she gets really hurt and nearly dies. So the grandfather brings her back. She gets healed up and wants to go back out. But the grandfather, Barnabas, is like, nope, you're not coming out. You're just going to stay here. study, and then just live a normal life. So Helen's super pissed off about that and picks up where we're at in the story now. And Barnabas remains stubborn and will not bring her with him anymore. And so she returns back to drinking heavily and just gets completely trashed. She wants to go into the armory to, play with the weapons again. And the governess and the butler refused to because Barnabas said no, even though she rattling off her resume of all the crazy things that she's done. And, the butler and the governess, they haven't been to that fantasy land, but the butler knows how insane the stuff that she's done, and the governess has, really no idea. And so she gets to the point where she's just so depressed that she becomes suicidal. So the governess tries to talk her out of it. And so what Helen decides to do is she goes off and storms off towards the edge of the forest where they go to pay this toll to a troll, and then they end up in the fantasy land. So she goes to the troll and gives a small fairy tooth, basically, as they typically do. But the troll won't let her through because I guess Barnabas is already through. So she attacks the troll. The troll attacks back, and she kills this troll. And so when she does that, it completely blocks off the entryway. So she goes to open it up, and when she does, it's just more forest. It's not the desert that they usually go to, this doorway. And so Barnabas is trapped on the other side now. He's still in the other world. So he has to travel around, and it takes months and months and months and months for him to finally come home. So he comes home, and he's all pissed off, obviously. He's like, girl, what have you done? And so those two just argue back and forth. And Helen's father, right, Barnabas' son, it seems like it was a similar thing that happened to him. And so he was kicked out, wasn't allowed to go anymore, and he was drinking like crazy. He ended up killing himself. So the whole thing is I'm just going to end up just like him. Why can't I go? And so they just keep arguing, and he's so stubborn, just won't allow it and won't let her go anymore. And so Barnabas the next day decides, all right, screw it, I got to go back, and I got to reset up this connection here with the doorway. So he has to take this long route around, and he goes through this creek. And so as he's going through the creek, the governess comes running after her, and she's like, you can't go, because however long you're gone, basically Helen's not going to make it. So you need to stay here, and you need to fix things. And so as she's arguing with him, this huge sea serpent shows up because it senses that there's some fresh meat there. The thing was terrified of Barnabas and his reputation, but the governess is there, so that sea creature is thinking easy pickings. And he's trying to slaughter this thing while she is still arguing with him the entire time. So it's this huge fight scene while she's arguing with him about you need to come home. He finally kills this thing, barely. And when he does, he turns back to her and decides, okay, you're right. And then decides to head back home to Helen. And that's a cliffhanger. So we'll see how it all comes to an end. But man, it's so cool. Such an awesome book. Helen of Wyndhorn, man, just enjoying every second of it. This is one of those where it's I just don't want it to end, I just really do not. So here we have Helen. Actually, let's go back a little further here. So here's where she's drinking, trying to get into the armory. She's having these late nights with the governess. This is where she goes and kills the troll, which severs off the connection. Then where she decides that she's going to basically go to kill herself, but the governess prevents it. Here's where Barnabas is going into that creek, and this huge sea serpent shows up. Make sure that gets caught on camera because that is freaking dope. The fight takes place as she's arguing the whole time, and then he decides, you know what, you're right, let's go turn back. So now we're one issue away, and that'll be it for Helen of Wyndhorn. I just don't want it to end. It's such an incredible story. So yeah, Helen of Wyndhorn, issue number 5. I gave it a 4.5. Lee gave it a 4.6. And then our final book here is this behemoth. It's bigger than a magazine format is what it is. It's here's Helen of Wyndhorn in comparison, which is just a standard book, but it's hardcover, so it's actually pretty large. And then Dragon Age is even larger, for perspective. So this book I randomly picked up in the most bizarre way. So no one's rated this on League whatsoever, so you can go ahead and see that there. And this doesn't have issues similar to Kingdom Riders. So as I read, we'll just kind of catch you up. But Dragon Age, it's a video game. It's based on the video game. And I, super early on in comics, was just like going to random websites and like buying stuff. And I saw this book, truly just judged by a cover. And I was like, that looks interesting. But I saw the price. I was like, hell no. Price is $40. So I was like, okay, that's not going to happen for this one particular site. Well, I go to that website, I kid you not, like 2 weeks later, not even, just to see if it was on sale or anything. That site, the company was going out of business, that local comic book shop. And they were selling this book for like 90% off. So instead of $40, it was like $4. I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and buy it then. So that's the reason I have it and am reading through it. What I read through thus far is we have 2 con artists in this big old city. They basically unintentionally are trying to con one another, but there's an older one and a younger one. The older one is wise to it and is now playing this fun game with the younger one of like trying to get him caught, but they both actually end up getting caught basically, and they're in trouble together. So they start running through the city. Meanwhile, in this city, there's like this rebellion that's about to take place. It's these orcs that are about to attack the city. So the 2 con artists are together, and they run into an old friend of the older one. And the older one is like, hey, I have a job for you guys. I can hide you as long as you're willing to take this job. And they're like, we don't really have a better option, so let's go ahead and do that. And so now basically what they have to do is it's some sort of heist, and they got to figure out a way to break into a vault. And so now they're going to try to figure out like how do we get the schematics for that by using, you know, their con artist skills. So that's the story thus far. Take you through some of the artwork. It's a massive book here. Like I raise the cover and it nearly hits the camera. It's like that large. But the art is pretty good. Good saturation that you have here. It reminds me a little bit of Battle Chasers to a certain extent, but not quite. And so here we have the con artists kind of doing their thing. I'll just show off the one side because you get a good sense of what we have here. Those are the orcs and the rebellion that's starting to take place. And here's where they start to be found out and they need to find some help. Here's where they find that person that can help them out, and they're trying to decide, okay, what do we do next as far as setting up a plan here to move forward. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. Dragon Age, I haven't played the games. I think I started the first 30 minutes of Dragon Age Inquisition, so I would have to play that to get a better sense. But since I'm doing the podcast and stuff, it's like, you know, whatever. We'll just go ahead and read it, and we'll be a little sharper on the lore before we actually get a chance to apply it in any of the video games. So yeah, that's Dragon Age, and we'll just kind of keep reading through it similar to like we're doing for Kingdom Riders. So yeah, that I think is it for this episode of the podcast. So let's just go ahead and recap everything. So, you know, we had Kingdom Riders. So Kayla, she won, and now she's sponsored along with Mal, and they're going to head off to their first race. We had Assorted Crisis Events issue number 5, the conclusion to this trade. We had a girl stuck in a time loop early on in the crisis and is now helping others through it. Do a Powerbomb, Lona and Cobra Sun. We had Lona's uncle, but he is down and out, and they did advance, but now it's going to be a death match for the next round. Poison Ivy, issue number 8. It was Poison Ivy with the assistance of the HR assistant, got out of her sticky situation, and now we'll just have to see where things go next. Saga, this is the start of Volume 7, issue number 37, where everyone is headed towards this comet to try to get the ship repaired. Batman and Robin, issue number 20, where we have Batman looking through Robin's journal to figure out where Memento is and where he may have been taken. Nice house on the lake. Everyone hates Walter now. Everyone has their memories back. Naya is now dead, so what all is going to happen as we head to the final issue of this crazy thriller? Fables 151, just kind of a setup of the story here. We have a new Green Jack, and we have warehouses trying to reclaim their land. Helen of Wyndhorn, issue number 5. So we have Helen down in the dumps and depressed and killed the troll that allowed them to traverse. The governess is now convinced Barnabas to stay. And Dragon Age, 2 con artists that were trying to con each other, now forced to work together and stuck in a pretty challenging situation. So that's it. Those are the books. That is the wrap for this Omega. Now, plans for this Saturday. So I'm off Thursday, which is great. So I'll probably go and end up picking up the books then. But the pulls are actually kind of a lot this week. It's 8. So it's like, okay, if I pick it up Thursday, maybe I can read 4 and 4 and then record. And that leaves only room to do 2 backlogs. So what I'm thinking is that'll be the plan. We'll read all 8, and then the 2 backlogs will then be Batman and Robin. So we'll get to issue number 21. And then the other book I was thinking of is just going through Saga, because I have so many of those issues in backlog. So I should really kind of always be having Saga any chance that I get, just to like slowly start balancing it out, because if I'm doing other books and I leave Saga off, then like towards the end it's going to be nothing but Saga, which is fine, but not ideal if we're trying to like always have some sort of variety in the show. So that's what I think I'm going to do. The 8 pulls for this week, Saga, and then Batman and Robin. So yeah, with that, we'll close it out. Thanks so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Check the description below on where you can follow the show on social media. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, share, do the things to help the show grow. Let me know how I can improve. Feel free to send me an email as well. That's down there as well. And lastly, if you'd like to support the show monetarily, there's a link or a URL to buymeacoffee.com/SaturdayMorningReview. Any funds there would help towards, honestly, just buying comics. So all donations are greatly appreciated. So yeah, we'll go ahead, close it up. Thank you so very much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
This has been a DMW production. Thanks for stopping by.